So you've maybe already watched Jono's video called How Am I Doing? This is my video. And maybe you haven't. And if you haven't watched his, go back and watch his. It's awesome. We share our story as much as we feel like it'll be helpful and supportive for you. And so not to be salacious or to share all the private details, but going through challenging life circumstances is hard. And sometimes it's supportive to see different ways it can be done. And so we asked our community, hey, if we're willing to answer your questions, what questions would you ask us? So first question, and this is such a good question. What are the greatest lessons you've learned from being married and divorced more than once? Okay, so many lessons. And I have like lessons from each marriage too. And I'm not gonna go into all of that. Some of the greatest lessons that I've learned is regardless of the circumstances, there is always a way to learn and grow through it gracefully. It is going to bring up your biggest insecurities, right? And those insecurities existed prior to the relationship or prior to the experience, right? But they're just magnified or amplified because of maybe the dynamics in the relationship or the dynamics of the experience, whatever it is. And you have the opportunity to confront and conquer those illusions of your fears. And I'm gonna be honest, I read that line, that phrase in a book, and it has stuck with me so much. And I just paused after I read it and I was like, it's so true. In life, we have our insecurities and we came by them honestly. We came by them from childhood, from generations of behavior patterns that, we were taught by our parents and they were taught by their parents. There's an epigenetics component to it where emotions and beliefs are literally passed down through our DNA. And so there's nothing wrong with the fact that we see the world the way we see it. Like, you're not crazy. But sometimes those behavior patterns and those beliefs, they don't serve us. And our most painful life experiences bring those beliefs to light. If it wasn't so painful, we would just keep ignoring it, right? At least I would. I think that's human nature. And I'm a personality type that enjoys a good challenge. And I'm still over here being like, ooh, that's painful. We don't need to go there regarding certain things. And the biggest challenge, at least for me along those lines, was at starting out, I would say, and I'm not saying starting out in the marriage, but like in adulthood, when I recognized that there were certain beliefs and there was pain around those beliefs. It's not that I didn't want to heal them. It's not that I wanted to run from them. It's that I literally didn't know how to address it in a healthy way. I didn't know how to address conflict in a healthy way. I didn't know how to support myself in a healthy way and still show up and support the other person in a healthy way. And the reality is most of us don't, and we have to learn it somehow. And a lot of times it is a bit of trial and error. And so that is what I would say is the greatest lesson overall that I've taken from it, is that regardless of one party carries more fault for certain outcomes, there's always something that can be learned and you can always grow through it, and it doesn't have to define you in a negative way. But to do that, you are going to have to confront and conquer the illusion of your fears, and those fears are your deepest insecurities. And that doesn't have to be painful, but the most supportive way to do that is to start with self-compassion. Next question. The best advice my parents got when they got married was become the president of each other's fan club. Something I've noticed about the two of you is you still seem to be big fans of each other. Would you say that's true? And how do you accomplish that? Yeah, I would say that's absolutely true. And for all of the challenges that Jonathan and I have had, or Jono and I have had, and some of them which we've shared with you in previous marriage problem videos or our story videos, there was always a foundation of a good friendship. And that was part of the conversation that I initially had with him a few years ago was, hey, we've always been good friends, and regardless of what our future relationship looks like, I always want us to stay friends. I'm concerned if certain behavior patterns keep happening between us that we didn't used to recognize, but now we recognize, like, I'm concerned if that keeps happening, it is going to erode the friendship. And I know that not all relationships look like that. And I know there's very good reason for not all relationships to look like that. So I don't want to tell you what your ultimate goal is, right? Like, that's for you to decide, because you are your own guru. I know I have ultimate or multiple ultimate goals for me, and I have values that I hold very close to my heart. And one of those values is integrity, right? So it has always been a goal of mine to show up in my life with integrity and act in integrity towards myself and towards my partner and towards my children and towards the people I love and care about. And the reality is that I didn't have the skills at any point in my life to do that the way I always wanted to. Like, that wasn't modeled for me. I had to learn the hard way. I had to mess up, right? I'm going to share something with you. And this was a definition I learned having a Christian background. There is the scripture that says, be ye therefore perfect, right? And then, so Christians take that as like, oh, I'm commanded to be perfect, right? But in the original Hebrew, the word perfection has a completely different meaning than it has in English. In Hebrew, it means whole and with integrity. It specifically does not include the definition of without flaw. While in the English language, that's how we interpret perfection, is without flaw. And I learned that when I was a teenager in college, and that was so powerful for my type A personality, who definitely held the without flaw definition and then tried to like attune my life to that, which it's not supportive for anyone. And so when I read that definition, I always carried that with me and said, okay, I can treat myself as a whole person and I can act with integrity. And then when I inevitably act without integrity, because it's going to happen, I can make amends. I can do the things that I can do to make things right. And then I am once again back in integrity. So I would say, yes, back to the question, like, we are big fans of each other. And that is part of what has shaped how we've handled our entire relationship, but specifically the past few years. And that is a wonderful gift to have that opportunity with a former partner. I also have had relationships where trying to follow that path would not be the healthiest thing to do at all, not even a little bit, because the other person had so many challenges, I'm just going to choose to label them as challenges, that they could not show up with enough integrity to be a friend in a supportive way. And so the nuance of how you accomplish that, there's so much to it, right? It always starts with doing your own work and your own growth, and then finding the and in the relationship that is supportive for both of you. And what I mean by that is finding the and. I used to have this false, and this was completely unconscious, but this false dichotomy belief that it was, oh, either my needs get met or the other person's needs get met. Either, me or my partner, either me or my children. And I realized, and that was part of my journey, because I had these behavior patterns of self-sacrificing to the point of self-betrayal because I was trying to earn love and belonging and acceptance. And don't worry, that started in childhood. And I became aware of that dynamic about myself, and I needed to do the work to show up for myself better. And so the details of your story might be different, but how do you accomplish that for you? Is you find the support that you need, and you find the unconditional love that you need. And even if you're in a partnership where they can't give that to you, it is possible for you to give it to yourself. And we talk about that a lot in our attachment series playlist, and we talk about that a lot in our membership site with our content there. So next question. How do you not view divorce as a failure? Just to be clear, I'm not saying I'm viewing you as a failure, but I think this is a mind trap people get in, and the advice would be very helpful to some. I love the question, and I love that she clarified it. And even, or he, I don't know if it's he or she, they clarified it. And even if they hadn't clarified it, I still wouldn't, haven't interpreted it as me being a failure. But that has to do with how I see myself in the world. And I know how everybody doesn't see themselves that confidently. Anyway, but it's true. There is an overall stigma for a very real reason that any divorce is a failure. And so many people have endured terrible situations and abuse because in their mind that was better than getting divorced. And for me, that's personally not how I see it. And that's not how Jono sees it either. And as much as neither one of us will ever say like, yeah, this is what we wanted. This was our ideal. This is what our plan was when we got married. Because the reality is nobody ever gets married to get divorced. We are grateful for the opportunity to break some of those stigmas and to set an example of another possible dynamic that can be supportive for our children and for other people that need that support, that it doesn't always have to be mean and ugly and hurtful. So I'm actually going to reference you to, because we talked about this pretty extensively in one of our story videos on divorce. And so I'm going to say, go back and watch that video about how to get out of the mind trap of divorce being a failure. Next question. What are you doing to heal and get in a healthy place? Okay, so love this question. We talk about this a little bit in one of our other videos together about how we've managed divorce and the work we've done together and the work we've done separately. And I'm going to answer this question the same way we answered that question, is it wasn't, oh, we separated and then we started doing the work. Right? We did the work in the marriage individually and together and then said, okay, what does the healthiest version of our relationship look like going forward? And so, what am I doing to heal and get in a healthy place? Like, it's not anything different than what I've been doing for years, right? Because this is a dynamic that we have been working through for quite a few years and it's not new. And so it's all the supportive things that we talk about. And for me, like specifically meditation, journaling, having the therapeutic tools that I love to use, like Qigong and that sort of stuff is really my jam. Those things might not be your jam. I spend a lot of time on the water because water is very soothing for me. Whether it's at a hot springs or on the lake or paddleboarding, I love it. And so walking that path to, one, know your needs, and then two, feeling safe to express your needs, and then three, leaving the space open for those needs to be met is all about that healing journey. And that's true in your relationship with yourself. That's true in your relationship with a partner. That's true when you're transitioning out of a relationship with a partner into friendship and co-parenting. Like, it's all the same work, and it's just doing that and making the time for it day in and day out. And one of my biggest challenges in doing that my entire life is it felt like that wasn't the highest priority because I was so accomplishment driven and because I was so results driven. And so it's like, oh, so if I spend the time doing those things, what's the results of them? Well, the results is a happy, healthy, well-centered individual who knows their own needs, right? But I was so stuck in this place of like, what are the tangible physical results? Like, does it look like money? Does it look like certificates? Does it look like accomplishment? And I don't say that as someone who is like, oh, I value that over everything else. But that is how a closer personality quite often rates things in a hierarchy. That was part of my opportunity to, one, know my own needs, and two, value them enough to make time for them. So those are all the questions I have for today. Do you have any more questions for me or for Jonathan? Who knows? Maybe we might do another video like this in the future. And I hope sharing my experience and sharing how I've dealt with my personal challenges, and then collectively how Jonathan and I have dealt with challenges together, has been supportive for you, or how you can support a loved one going through a challenging experience. Thank you so much for being a part of this community. And remember to keep shining. We need your light.